Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 2 of the TriStar Sports Show. Jamie and I are back here and here to recap what happened on Saturday, all with all things Vols, and kind of look forward to this coming Saturday. Jamie, I would say not too much to complain about from the UTC game, huh?
Not at all. I was pretty happy. Uh, not too much to complain about.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a little bit of everything. I would like to give ourselves a little bit of a shout out. We kind of called some things correctly. One being Dante Thornton having hopefully the first of many breakout games in a breakout season.
Yeah,
He had 3 catches, 2 of them going for a touchdown. He hit over the century mark in receiving yards. Overall, it kind of exactly what you wanted to see, and kind of hopefully putting him above the rest of the pack, and kind of it'd be nice to have like a go-to guy. I guess is a good way to put it.
yeah. We were talking about the year two receivers in Heupel, and Thornton must have heard us when we were talking about him because he lit it up on Saturday. Brew looked like he hasn't missed a beat coming off the injury. His leg looked just fine. Couple
Yeah.
other things. I mean, obviously, with if we're talking about two receivers, that means the quarterback did pretty good. And if you didn't see the game, I'd recommend going back and watching it because Nico looks like the real deal.
No, he does, and he's kind of. I mean, we all. I mean, granted, we know it was a UTC game, but I mean, if you go back and kind of watch the actual film of the game, the ball placement, no matter who you're playing against, is definitely impressive. And that's the. I mean, it's not like
Yeah,
he was just hitting check down after check down after check down. I mean, he was taking some shots downfield in the middle of some triple coverage, and
yeah,
with most quarterbacks, you'd probably get a little bit irritated with where he was throwing the ball. But with him, you kind of know he's putting it in the right spot where only his receiver could get it. And like you mentioned, Brew, I mean, he looks healthier than he's ever been. I don't think I've ever seen him juke somebody in the open field. He used to
I
just
haven't.
he kind of just used to run through you, but now he can run around you too, which is a little bit scary. But no, I mean, really, for the most part, a flawless game. I mean, you and me both kind of talked about how towards the end of the half things got a little bit not as perfect. I mean, granted, you're up 45-0. There's not too much of a concern, but I
Yeah.
mean, overall, pretty solid game. What you say?
Oh yeah. Couple other things that I had just to note. One thing I really enjoyed about Nico, and I've enjoyed this since the bowl game, is his ability to his ability to scramble, but not just to scramble. His ability to extend the play with his legs and then still keep his eyes downfield. I think that's a sign of maturity in a quarterback because a lot of times if a quarterback's fast or has the speed and agility, a lot of times once they get out of the pocket, they just get tunnel vision and will go get their 5 or 6 yards. Uh, I noted down that trait reminded me of watching Bryce Young play at Alabama because he a lot of times he would get out of the pocket and then still keep his eyes downfield, set his feet, and next thing you know, what you thought might have been a 10-yard scramble turns into a 30-yard touchdown. So I thought that was really impressive. Samson, just like we said again, looked like I mean an all nation running back for sure. Not I think he had his ceiling is definitely above the best in the SEC at this point, and I know it was just UTC, but he looked dominant.
I mean, yeah, 12 carries and I think 3 touchdowns, and he hit over the century mark as well. I mean, he averaged I
Yeah,
think 10 yards a carry, and I mean, doesn't matter who you're playing, you're going to take that all day long. And
exactly.
then Nico, like we were talking about, he broke the single half record for any quarterback in
Yeah,
Tennessee history, which is amazing.
over three.
That I mean, in his first true half in Neyland Stadium, I mean, Verdi broke one record. He won, I think it was SEC Freshman of the Week,
Yeah,
and I mean, wow. I mean,
it was awesome.
it couldn't have started any better. There really isn't many major concerns. I think for the most part, we got out of there totally healthy. I don't. I didn't really
Yeah,
see any injuries. At least being there, I didn't see any injuries. For it being as hot as a day as it was honestly kind of good to see that nobody got hurt.
I agree.
Um, I know on the defensive side,
Defense.
yeah, defensive side of the ball. I mean, giving up 3 points. That's pretty remarkable. And that came in the second half when all of our starters were not in the game. So
Yeah. I don't know if you saw the stat about Pierce, but he only played 10 snaps the
yeah,
entire game, which I
I,
love to see.
I mean, whether that was, I mean, I'm assuming it was intentional. I mean, a lot of people were talking about the idea that a lot of the UTC linemen were kind of chop blocking at our DNs because we were just simply too big and too fast for them, which is a common thing when you play a smaller opponent.
Yeah.
And I think they realized that pretty early in the game that was their game plan. And I don't blame them for not taking a chance on him. We need him down the stretch, especially coming up this week. I mean, 10 snaps and we only gave up 3 points, and arguably one of
Right.
the best defensive players in the country. That's not a bad sign.
Yeah, not at all. Maybe should have, you could argue, I guess, given up a couple more field goals just because I think they did miss a couple chip shots. But, I mean, we didn't give up any touchdowns, and I'll take that. Anytime you don't give up a single touchdown in a game, they can kick all the field goals they want. The Heupel offense is going to outscore you.
I mean, yeah, our biggest blemish, I think, on the whole game was probably an interception in the second half by Gaston Moore, which, I mean, not the biggest deal in the world. It almost went for a very, very far pick six, but Nathan Leacock, I believe he's a freshman. I don't know, maybe a sophomore now. Just a young receiver. He chased him down all the way down the field. So at least it's a good sign kind of to show the team that there's people still trying, even in the point of the game when it's 50-0 or 50-3, whatever it was at that point. I mean, it
Yeah.
just shows not necessarily just the culture, but I mean, they want to play, and the guys that are earning their opportunity in the second half aren't just giving up and going through the motions. I mean, we put up, I think,
Exactly.
493 yards in the first half with Nico in, and then we finished with 713. So we still put up another couple hundred in the second half, which compared to their only 225, I think it was the entire game. It was impressive. It was a good team win, good team effort, and get ready for the next one, right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. We do have a harder test coming up. NC State did win their game 38-21. Just a couple of, I guess, quick stats that I had written down. Their quarterback that we touched on last week, McCall, he threw for 318 yards on 26 of 40 with 3 touchdowns and 1 pick. So uh, that's about what Nico threw in the first half, but I'd still say it's a pretty good game. Definitely against a better opponent in Western Carolina. I guess some other stats from that game is their running back had 20 carries and 123 yards and 2 touchdowns. They look to him a lot. He's a workhorse from what it seems like. And they had one receiver that had 9 receptions, 121 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And 2 of his touchdowns were out of the slot, and one of them was in kind of an under center run, like a jet sweep. So that's, as far as passing goes, that's their guy. Our DBs need to know where he's at on the field the entire game.
Yeah, I was actually watching, I believe, the back half of their game because I mean, I saw the score was pretty. I think it was tied pretty late in their game with Western Carolina, and I immediately was like, "Well, we're playing them next week. I might as well tune into this. If they lose, this will get a whole lot more interesting." They ended up pulling away, but the wide receiver one that you're talking about, I think his name is Kevin Conception, and
Yeah,
which, first of all,
it's something weird.
that's an awesome name, to say the least, especially for a receiver. I mean, yeah, I think he's by far their biggest weapon.
Yeah,
Hopefully, we'll have all of our. I mean, I'm sure we'll double team him. I know Ricky Gibson didn't play in this game. Our corner, starting one of our starting corners, just because he's a little banged up. They said he'll be back this week. I wouldn't be surprised if welcome back to the season is a first game assignment of Kevin Conception. So that'd be something to keep an eye on. I wouldn't be surprised if NC State knows that this is his first game and they might pick on him a little bit at corner. I mean, teams do that. So, and I know on their side of the ball, I saw on Twitter today that I think their starting safety is still out. He tore his ACL in the bowl game at the end of the year last year, so he's not expected to return until October. So
okay.
another really good piece on their team that's unfortunately out for them. But overall, I mean, they did not play their best game.
No,
I
not
think
at
that's
all.
safe to say. A lot of teams didn't play their best game this Saturday. But luckily for them, they were able to pull it out and get a win. They're still ranked; they didn't move in the rankings at all. So this will be a top 25 matchup coming this Saturday.
Yeah, they're. I think they moved to 24. Is that what we were saying earlier?
Yeah, I think I believe they were 24 last week, either 24, 23, or somewhere in that range. I mean, if they moved, they didn't move much.
Yeah, they are. They are still 24. Can confirm. Um, just touching on their defense, though, they. I mean, obviously their defense did allow 21 points against Western Carolina. That of those 21 points, they had 241 passing yards and 120 rushing yards. Uh, I like to think that our offense is a little bit better than Western Carolina's. I don't know what they got going on down there, but if they're putting up those kind of numbers on NC State, then moving the ball shouldn't be an issue for us, at least, especially how our offense played last week.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple hours ago, I saw a video start or not resurfacing, but surfacing the Twitter a little bit, and it's one of their defensive players was saying that the famous quote in the Heupel era is, "They got to get their cleats in the ground and be ready before the ball is snapped." Time and time again, these teams keep mentioning how the important thing is Tennessee moves so fast, they got to be set before the play, or else they're going to get beat downfield. But I think every single team that has said that gets beat downfield. I mean, at this point, I think he just jinxed himself. The really good teams like Georgia, I've never heard them mention that. They just kind of shut up and play the game, and
Yeah,
oftentimes beat you. So whatever that means from NC State, I mean, I I think we're going to keep it rolling. I really do. I think we looked way too smooth in what we were trying to accomplish in the first game, and I don't even think we saw half of the offense really yet. I mean, we really didn't run many different plays.
no, I mean, I didn't go back and count every single play we ran, but I bet it's nowhere near what the Heupel playbook has in it. And like we were saying last week, he doesn't typically like to show his hand much in the early games. Maybe he did a little bit more than in past years, just to kind of get Nico that the first game jitters out, give him some well needed, much needed confidence. But I still think there's a lot more to see from the Heupel offense this year, and I agree with you. I think we're going to keep it rolling this weekend.
And I mean, another thing to note, I mean, I mean, if you want to call it, I mean, it's a neutral site game, but it's a night game on ABC. I mean, Kirk Herbstreit and the A+ crew is going to be on the call there. I mean, it should be it's the game of the week, if not Texas and Michigan. So there's gonna be a lot of eyes on Nico, and then this weekend. I mean, we were sitting there. I think at halftime, his odds to win the Heisman went to, you said, to number three.
Yeah, when I looked at halftime, his odds were third in the nation, and when I looked today, they dropped down to sixth with a couple of guys who played later in the day moving back above him. But that just shows you what Vegas and I guess the rest of the nation thinks that he might have a legit shot if we go as far as we think we're going to go. I think he'll have a legit shot to be one of the finalists at least.
I mean, yeah, I think this is the first time there's been this much probably hype around a young quarterback at Tennessee in a very, very long time. I mean, when Hendon came in, it wasn't like there was really any expectations. I mean,
No,
and he was a more of a veteran player at that point. Same thing with Joe. I mean, we were all hyped about Garantano years ago before, unfortunately, things didn't necessarily go his way. So, I mean, it's exciting. I mean, he redshirted his freshman year, so he's still considered a freshman according to all the stats and all the
right?
different awards. So, I'm assuming he's on his path to probably win Freshman of the Year if all things go, well. And even if he can just become a Heisman finalist this year, that means things have gone pretty well for us. So,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they'd have him as a Heisman finalist unless we were knocking on that playoff door. But I really do think that we're going to go as far as he takes us, and based off of the last game, like we've been saying, I know it's just UTC, but it looks like he could take us pretty far.
due to not a lot to talk about from the Tennessee side of things going from last week and going into this week, we're kind of actually going to highlight some of the different games that we watched from week one, and we'll even throw week zero in there. I think the talk of the country is probably Florida State. Unfortunately for them, I
Yeah.
mean they lost week 0 in Dublin, Ireland against Georgia Tech, and last night, man oh man, they had a very tough showing at home against Boston College.
Yeah. I mean, I, I didn't watch the game last year, but I heard the announcers talking about Boston College playing them pretty close last year, or giving them a little bit of a struggle, and they got it done last night. I mean, Florida State, man, they look rough. I know my dad asked me today if I wanted to make a bet with him if Norvell would finish the season out or not. I tend to lean towards he probably will, just because he's proven it before, and I think he is a good head coach. I think this might be more of a DJ problem than a Norvell problem. But yeah, they just, I mean, these past two games, they just looked off. Lost to two worse opponents.
I mean, I really don't think there's anything wrong with Mike Norvell. I think he's actually a very good coach. But for whatever reason, whether this team just doesn't mesh well or they're lacking a leader. I mean, they just looked pretty unmotivated last night. They got down early, and that was like they looked like they already given up on the season.
Yeah.
You could see it in the fan base all last night in Florida State. I mean, I felt like almost after every 3 and out, they were just booing and booing and booing, and it was honestly pretty hard to watch. Because I mean, I don't consider myself a Florida State fan whatsoever, or Boston College. I don't have a dog in the fight, but coming off of the season they had last year, I can only imagine what it feels like to bring in who they thought is a another transfer quarterback, and not he hasn't necessarily played perfect no matter where he's gone, but he's shown flashes. I mean, the video I kept seeing today was when he was playing while he was at Clemson. I think he was there playing at Notre Dame a few years ago, and he just he couldn't miss, and that's when everyone kind of
Yeah.
was buying into the DJ U hype, and it's kind of just gone downhill. And then he transferred to Oregon State, and from what it seemed like, he didn't play awful, but now he's been put back up on the highest stage like he was at Clemson, and it looked bad. I mean, I don't want to be the guy to defend him, but there was plenty of plays in that game where receivers dropped some pretty
Yeah.
reasonable passes. So
They were dropping them. I
I
mean,
know I know their tight end had a really really tough night,
yeah.
and I mean, don't get me wrong, there was plenty of overthrown balls, but I mean, I will give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, and he wasn't getting any help. That's for sure.
No, not at all. If I'm playing the devil's advocate about DJU, I think that Dabo might have been a little quick to pull the trigger on him uh, and put in Cade Klubnik a couple years ago. I think that started the downfall of him, and ever since then he hasn't been the same. But right, like you were saying before that, he was. I mean, his freshman year and especially coming out of high school, he was the talk of the town.
I mean, yeah, I could totally see that probably being a confidence hit to him. I
Yeah,
mean, he was what he thought was the guy. Everyone called him the guy, and a couple games go south. All of a sudden, everyone starts calling for the young freshman behind him. I mean, we've seen it on so many different football teams on the pro level, on the college level. The fans, believe it or not, we can definitely ruin a few things. That's to
yeah.
say the least.
Florida
And I
State was
mean,
calling for the backup last night.
yeah.
I seen videos of chants for their freshman backup, who was not nearly highly as recruited as Klubnik was.
Yeah, I think was his name Brock Glenn.
Yeah,
That's what they were chanting for last night. I was like, I kept hearing the crowd. They're like, "We want Brock," and I was like, "Who is Brock?" And they're moving on from this guy already like a game and a half into the season. I was like, that's kind of that's a tough look. And but I mean, I guess it's safe to say that their season's pretty much already spoiled. I mean, I really don't think you have a shot to make the playoffs unless they literally won every single game the rest
yeah.
of the year and won
They
the
had to be 10-2.
ACC. And they
Right.
probably have to win the conference because I don't see them with two bad conference losses. I mean, that's the worst part about all of this is the two games they just lost are the two games their conference games to start the year.
Yeah.
You can't even try to play it off like it was a hard non-conference game. They lost to conference teams. I mean, I as a Tennessee fan, I understand the frustration. Florida State's had a bad summer. I mean, we beat them in baseball to begin their summer. They already were upset with that. So, I mean,
I don't know.
Hopefully things will turn around over there. I guess it's safe to say. I mean,
Yeah,
they dropped out of the AP poll today. They're one of the first teams in a long time, potentially ever. We're not really sure on the stat to go from preseason top 10 to completely out of the rankings after one switch of the AP poll, which is a wild situation
yeah.
down there in Tallahassee.
I do remember them saying, I believe maybe second team ever to start in top 10 and go 0-2. Uh, I think where some of the discrepancy comes in with the one switch of an AP poll is that since they played in week 0 and were 0-2, obviously there was only one AP poll update since then. But yeah, I mean, hopefully they turn it around. I believe in Norvell. I think he's a good coach, like you were saying. If they fire him, I think that's their own fault. I don't think that he's the issue down there. But I mean, if they couldn't make it in a 14 playoff going 13-0, I don't know if they're going to make it in a 12-team playoff after starting 0-2.
I mean, yeah, they if they fire him, all of a sudden the Dion rumors are going to start swirling up again over the Florida State. So we'll have to keep an
Yeah,
eye on that situation. And if we want to
yeah,
stay,
for sure.
if we can stay on the struggle bus here and talk about LSU, they lost Sunday night to USC, and I think the game was played in Vegas. It was a neutral site, or what they want to call is a neutral site.
Yeah,
And man, oh man, Brian Kelly cannot win a season opener. What it feels like, 3 straight seasons, 2 of them being to the team we just talked about, Florida State, and then now to USC, where they there was moments in that game where the momentum was in their hands. They had a chance to put USC away a couple of times, and they just couldn't seem to do it.
yeah. I mean, that may be I know he's turned it around the past 2 seasons toward the end of the year. He beat Bama either last year or a couple of years ago, and I mean they typically finish pretty strong, but if they don't pick it up this year, that may be a coach who doesn't make it through the season.
I mean, yeah, even when he was at Notre Dame, I mean, it was like he would,
Yeah,
beat the teams he's supposed to, whatnot, and then it comes to the big game, and his team would disappear. And he showed a lot of animation in his post game press conference. He smacked the table and made sure that he was to point out that he was very upset with his team. I think last year he actually, there's a clip of him in the post game or at halftime, and he's like, "I'm gonna kill my team." And that clip went around. I mean, I think it was blown out of context, but
yeah,
he's always kind of have some funny quotes. And I mean, how often or how consistently can you lose the first game and somehow turn the season around? So
right,
with
exactly.
them, I mean, and they're an SEC team with a tough schedule. I mean, they got to still play Bama every year. I'm pretty sure they still play Florida. Um, so it's not like they can just pretend that everything's okay. I mean, I know USC was. I think a lot of people were saying was kind of a drastically underrated team. So
Yeah, I mean, Lincoln Riley is always going to put up points in his offense. They don't have the quarterback they had last year in Caleb Williams, but they are still a good team, and that offense is still going to throw the ball uh, 30, 40 plus times a game, and they're going to put up points. But I mean, like you were saying, how many times can LSU continue to turn it around, especially without some studs returning? Like I know they lost Brian Thomas, they lost Malik Neighbors, they lost Jaden Daniels, they lost among many other pieces. I just don't know what's going to happen this year. I've personally never been a fan of the coach who throws his team under the bus after a loss because at the end of the day, it's your job to get that team ready to go out there and play. And if they don't go out there and play, then I don't know why. I don't know how you can blame them whenever it is literally your job to get them ready to do that.
I mean, yeah, he did the classic whole rant where you're talking like the team didn't do this, the team didn't do that, and then the very last thing before he gets out of the press conference is like I got to be better. I'm the reason why the team's bad. Just so people like us can't sit here and just trash on him. But
Right.
again, we're going to continue with the struggle bus here. The awful struggle bus of week 1 continues with the Florida Gators, which I think everyone in the state of Tennessee was very happy to watch them get absolutely throttled by
Yeah.
Miami.
They look bad, bad.
And I think Miami looked a lot better than what people were expecting.
I mean, Miami looked good. I know they jumped pretty high in this week's AP poll, but I don't know. Florida just looked. I mean, Mertz looked bad. I know he didn't play too long, but there's talks about him not playing this week because of the injury that he sustained. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know who they. I'm not sure who they play this week. Um,
I'm gonna assume
but
it's probably a cupcake, probably.
yeah, probably. But if their backup comes in there and looks good, I don't know if they look back from if they go back to Mertz whenever he is healthy.
I mean, we were sitting on the couch watching that game together, and
Yeah,
I was saying throughout the whole game that I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Lagway, I believe is how you pronounce it, their freshman quarterback who was highly recruited, um, come in there and play. I mean, unfortunately, at the expense of Mertz getting injured, that was his shot. I think they scored one touchdown after he came in. Um, so, I mean, I think a lot of people were kind of just at the point where you saw who was supposed to be your starting man in the game, and it didn't look pretty. And you kind of gave them 3 quarters to really show something, some sort of life to get ready for the rest of the season.
true.
And time again, they just couldn't move the ball. And I just looked on their schedule. They play Samford, not Stanford, but Samford next,
Yeah,
and
so that should be a win. Should be.
should be. So I mean, if they don't win that one, things are going really downhill fast for Florida, which I don't think anyone would be that upset about. At least in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be. I mean, I might be rooting for what are they, the Bulldogs?
I think so. I think so.
Yeah, something like that. I'll be rooting for Samford this week.
Which then the following week I'm looking at they play A&M, which we saw A&M on Saturday night have the big game of the week against
Yeah,
Notre Dame at home, and they also were on the struggle bus. The SEC did not look pretty good in some of these neutral games, and I mean Notre Dame came into their stadium, and I mean it was an ugly game, to say the least. But
yeah.
Notre Dame found a way to win and pull away at the end.
I mean, is it crazy to say that Vanderbilt had the biggest win out of the SEC games this week?
I mean, definitely the most surprising. I
I
mean,
mean, just out of, I mean, between us and Bama and teams like that playing the cupcake teams, and every team who seemed like they played a team uh, worth anything losing. I mean, Vanderbilt played, what was it, Virginia Tech, and
yeah,
got to win in overtime.
I mean that was their first Power Four conference win in a while.
Yeah,
They they played great. They actually looked better than I've seen Vandy in a long time. And Virginia Tech, they were I've seen in the national media predicted to be like a sleeper team in the ACC. So I mean, they weren't like heavy favorites or anything like that, but people were talking about where a
yeah,
couple things go right, and they could be right there in the thick of it with everybody else. But I mean, I guess shout out to Vandy. They might be
yeah.
the gold star of the week, right? I
Right.
mean,
Just don't go saying Bama, you're next again, and they
no,
might be all right.
that aged very poorly many years ago, and I think they learned their lesson for that one. But
Hopefully.
I mean, if it wasn't Vandy, then maybe you could probably say Georgia. I mean, Georgia looked
I mean, yeah,
every bit of the Kirby Smart Georgia that we know and definitely hate. But
yeah,
they handled Clemson with ease.
yeah. I actually I agree with you. I think Georgia. I mean, playing Clemson and just I think I may have blown over that just because of how dominant they did look. But yeah, I mean, Georgia looked like Georgia to say the least. And another team, Alabama. I mean, I thought they might have started slow, but at the end of the game, Alabama looked like Alabama, and that scares me a little bit. But it'll be interesting to see those two teams play.
Yeah, and that's coming up soon. It is, and
Yeah,
we were sitting there watching the Bama game together. You know, just praying on the downfall of Tuscaloosa, and unfortunately, that only lasted, I think, 1-3 and out, and they never
yeah,
looked back. T.J. Finley, the Western Kentucky quarterback, who's kind of bounced around in the SEC, um, showed some hype here and there, but it all fell down so fast, and Bama just
yeah.
never looked back. And which I mean, we know. I mean, that's just Western Kentucky they're playing.
Right.
They're Bama still has the roster that they should be able to beat Western Kentucky by as much as they did. And but I mean, we'll know in a couple weeks. I mean, Georgia looks every bit of ready, and they look angry. They played
Yeah.
angry after kind of getting snubbed last year at the last minute. But That's the beauty of the 12-team playoff. There's no chance they get snubbed this year unless something drastic happens. Which is, I really just can't imagine a world where Georgia loses more than one game this year. So
That one game is going to be when we go to Athens, right?
I was. That's what we're gonna tell. That's what we're gonna tell ourselves. That's
Yeah.
um,
Some other games though, just to hit real quick. Texas, I mean, they also looked really good. Every bit of the SEC team that they are now. I was going to say they claim to be, but I mean they are in the SEC now. They looked really good.
yeah,
Iowa,
we saw Arch. We saw Arch Manning get in late in that game, and
yeah,
he actually threw. Or I think he threw for a touchdown, which kind of cool to see him in an actual game. I
right.
don't. I mean, I've never seen a backup more hyped up in the entire country than Arch Manning, but he's part of the Manning family, so we'll shut our mouth on that one.
Wish them the best for now.
For now, for
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Um, this one's quick, but I just wanted to point out that Iowa scored 40 points. That's a big deal for them.
No, they should get a round of applause. They should get a round of
Yeah,
applause. That's a bit. I
yeah,
mean, well, hold on. Let's pump the brakes on that real fast. If you look at their first half like sequence of play by play drives, I think it was like don't quote me on the exact thing here, but it's like punt, field goal missed, punt, fumble, punt, and I was like, oh, everyone was like, classic Iowa football's back. They don't give up any points, but they don't score, as you saw in the Tennessee Iowa Cheez-It Bowl. I mean, their
yeah,
offense is rough. It is, but that's probably the most points they've scored in a hot minute.
yeah. Definitely worth noting. Definitely worth giving them, like you said, their pat on the back, their round of applause. I guess just continuing down the slate. I guess not really on the struggle bus, but maybe. I mean, they almost got on it. Oregon struggled against Idaho for a little while.
Yeah,
Was not what they wanted.
I was seeing people share videos. I didn't watch the game at all, but I was seeing videos of Idaho running trick plays and scoring on Oregon, and there was a lot of just humor around that. I mean, Oregon, I think, only put up like 24 points. It was like 24-14 was the final. I mean, it wasn't anything impressive, which after that, I started looking into Idaho because I don't know much about the Idaho Vandals, but they are like a top 5 to 10 team in the FCS polls and stuff like that. So, I mean, they're competitive on that front, but I mean, Oregon, who people are seriously considering as national championship contenders.
Yeah,
Um, I mean,
Gabriel's still number one for Heisman in terms of odds.
what's weird is if you look at this, like the box score, it doesn't really tell the story of the game. I think he still threw for like 400
Mm-hmm.
yards or something crazy like that, but just didn't translate to touchdown drives. I can't really speak on the story of the game because I didn't watch it, but
Me neither.
I mean, definitely something to keep a note because I know that they have an interesting game coming up this week with Boise State, and I
Yeah,
mean,
another Idaho team
which don't know what's up with that.
who
And
actually looked really good this past week.
I mean, they put up a lot of points. Their defense wasn't anything to be too proud of, but I mean, if they can score,
Shootout.
you never know what could happen. You know,
Yeah,
I
see a
know.
high scoring game. And I believe that one's like a 10 or 11 o'clock game too. So maybe an
Yeah,
exciting after dark game.
we'll see if we can stay up for that one. You know, but um, another team kind of. I mean, it really felt like this week one took the sales out of a lot of the hype,
Yeah,
around a lot of teams. Colorado, you could argue, is probably in that conversation. I mean, they weren't playing a
yeah,
joke. They weren't playing a joke of a team. I mean, North Dakota State is an FCS school, but you could definitely say they're probably the best FCS school, if not one of the best currently. I mean, they've won plenty
yeah.
of championships down there.
Produced NFL. I mean, maybe not the best NFL players, but I mean Carson Wentz came out of there had a good run with the Eagles for a little while, and Trey Lance was the top 3 pick. Whether or not he should have been, we'll get into that later.
That's for another day. But I mean, this is where you and me disagree a lot on this. The whole Deion Sanders conversation.
Yeah,
I personally, I mean, I don't have anything against Deion Sanders. I just don't think they deserve the, I guess, hype that they receive. I mean, they hyped up this North Dakota State game like I've never seen before. I believe they striped their stadium. I
for an
mean,
FCS game.
for an FCS game, I mean that's one way to handle things. And they squeaked by. They really did. I
Yeah.
mean, there was some serious moments where they did not look like they were going to win that football game.
No, I mean I agree. I was watching it, and for a little while I was pulling for North Dakota State. I mean, you love to see the underdog win. Um, I'm not. I mean, like you said, we do disagree a little bit when it comes to Colorado. I'm not. I'm a Deion Sanders fan as a player. I'm not a crazy big fan as a coach, but I am a Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter fan. More so Travis Hunter, I believe. I personally believe that he is one of the best players at either of the positions he plays in the country. Um, and that catch, I mean, it was an FCS game, but that catch that he made to kind of seal the game was pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt Travis Hunter is a very, very excellent football player. It's just I don't know why it bothers me so much, but I am so sick of seeing the hype. I don't get it. I mean, they went 4-8 last year. I mean, which is good for that program, but you could have convinced me that they went 10-2 the way that they were talking about. Like if I didn't know football, you could have convinced me they went 10-2. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and this year, I mean, they're 1-0. They moved to a much tougher conference than what they were in. I know they have a game coming up. I don't know if it's this week or in coming weeks. It's like Nebraska, which a lot of people are talking about. That'll be an
Next
interesting
week
game. It's this week.
at Nebraska
Uh oh.
versus Little Mahomes.
Yeah. Dylan Raiola looking exactly like Patrick Mahomes before the game was kind of funny. But I mean, he looked good. Nebraska won. They weren't necessarily on the struggle bus this week. Um, we could be talking about them next week if things don't go well against Colorado.
We'll probably be talking about them if things do go well against Colorado.
That's also true because
Yeah.
I'll be the first one to let everyone know that Colorado did not win that week because I have a tendency to do that. But I mean,
Um,
just kind of recapping everything. I mean, it's like, I mean, I don't know if it's just because it's the first week of football and I'm not used to this again, and it's been too long of an off season. But man, oh man, there was some close calls and some significant losses to a lot of
yeah,
not contenders, but at least ranked teams.
big time.
Kind of the slate of games for week two. I think the easiest one to kind of note, which I think College Game Day is going there, is Texas at the Michigan Wolverines, and it's in the Big House. So we get a little SEC versus now it's an SEC versus Big Ten matchup.
Yeah.
Um, there's kind of a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of unknowns in this game. I mean, Michigan just won coming off of a natty, and Texas coming off of a playoff appearance. I mean, Texas brings a lot of people back. Michigan does not. I would not be shocked if Texas went in into the Big House and took care of business.
That's what, if I had to pick, and I know it's on the road in one of the premier college football environments, but I think from what I've seen from Texas and, like you said, how much Michigan has lost, whether that's their head coach, their starting quarterback, their starting running back, just in general, I think Texas go in there and pull off a big win on the road and maybe make it look pretty easy
Yeah,
if they do what they're supposed to.
I mean, really, the main thing Michigan's got going for them is home field advantage here. I mean, the Big
Yeah,
House is not an easy place to play, nonetheless. But I mean, I think Texas is really the better team here. I think
I
Michigan's been
agree.
a little bit probably overrated to start the year, just because I mean they are the reigning national champs, so you kind of are forced to put them up there somewhere. I fully expect them to lose this game. I'm not sure if they're true underdogs or not, according to Vegas. If we want
I
to
do
look
know
that up.
that Michigan moved down a spot to from 9 to 10, and Texas moved up a spot from 4 to 3. But let me uh, pull up the Michigan Texas game.
Yeah, because I'm curious to see who they actually have favored in that. I mean, I would think Vegas would probably have Texas favored, but I think the home field advantage for Michigan might kind of sway that a little bit. I could see them having as like a 3 point favorite.
7.5. from
Or
Texas.
wow.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
they believe they're a better team too. I don't know. I think Texas could cover that, but I also think with it being in the big house that Michigan could make it a close game, and I'm sure there will probably be a lot of people that pick Michigan to win the game just for the sole fact that they are in the big house.
I mean, I haven't really done much research on Michigan this year. I haven't watched them play yet. I couldn't. I can't really speak on. I'm not really sure who their quarterback is. It might have been their backup from last year, but I mean, I know they won week one. But I think we're in agreement here that the Longhorns should go in and take care of business, and I think it'd be honestly pretty surprising if they didn't at this point. I was not expecting to be favored by that much. I don't know if um, I would personally bet them to win by that much, but it's one of those things where I could we could see them go in there and win by 20. We could also see them go in there and lose. It's just two highly ranked teams battling it out.
Should be exciting. Their quarterback is the backup from last year. He before or last year he had 0 completions on 5 attempts, and week one this year he was 15 of 25 with 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So
Okay.
Not JJ McCarthy
No,
to say
no.
the least.
And they got no Harbaugh. That's another thing to mention. Harbaugh's gone,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
whether you want to say anything about the whole cheating scandal, I mean that he's gone too. So any room for cheating is out the window for Michigan.
yeah, I
Um,
agree.
Another good one to note is Arkansas at number 17, Oklahoma State. They were at least number 17 this
Yeah,
past week,
16 now.
so they moved up to
They moved
16.
up one.
I mean, Arkansas, we kind of talked about in the last episode. No one really knows what they're made of, but this is two kind of what you want to call, I mean, kind of the Midwest or southern Midwest area of Arkansas and Oklahoma, and just kind of, I want to be. We'll see a heavy dose of Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State, and I think we're going to see a heavy dose of running the ball from Arkansas. It's probably going to be a slow paced game of just running the football at each other, and I mean, I think Oklahoma State's probably the pretty heavy favorite in this.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty high on Ollie Gordon. I think he's really good. Probably maybe the second best running back in the country behind Judkins. Um, Maybe third behind Samson, if you want to talk about that. Ask me in a few weeks. But I mean, this will be a good one to watch, especially for Tennessee fans. We got to go play at Arkansas here in a couple weeks. So seeing how they look against another ranked opponent, I'm excited to see it and see how they fare.
Yeah, and then the next game we have to highlight would be Iowa at Iowa State. Let's see if Iowa can put up some points. That'd be
Yeah,
this would be a true test. I know Iowa
Iowa
State.
State didn't look good.
No, I think they put up 20. It was like 21-3. It was like early. It was a lower scoring game. Um, it's a huge rivalry though.
Yeah,
We can call it the Battle of the Corn. I don't think that's what they call it, but that's what I'm going to call it. Well, in-state bragging rights.
yeah.
I mean,
I
not much,
mean,
too much to really highlight on that, other than I mean, both teams are not the best in the world, but they are big rivals, and for what we know from someone that we know that lives in Iowa, I mean, it's a big deal. This is kind of the one game that everyone circles on the calendar for at least on the Iowa State side, and I'm sure for Iowa. I mean, you can't really name a bigger rivalry in the state of Iowa than this.
they call it the Cy-Hawk series,
Okay,
I guess, between your
Cyclone and
Cyclones and your Hawks.
okay, okay,
They do have a corn trophy, though.
no way.
Yeah.
You can't make this up.
So, I know. I mean, yeah, not too much to say about this game other than both teams are from Iowa, and it's a rivalry game. Uh, Iowa is the, I guess, better team as far as rankings go right now. They're number 21 as of today, and Iowa State is, I believe, still unranked. Yes, they are still unranked. Um, so, yeah, I don't know. go either way. Next game that I have on the list is South Carolina at Kentucky. They're both unranked, but it is an SEC matchup. And my little note that I put next to this one is, can both teams lose? Because if that was possible, that's what I'd want to see.
Yeah, I don't expect myself probably sitting down and watching this. I will probably know the outcome of it, whether I like it or not, due to Tennessee Twitter or Vol Twitter. Um, South Carolina had a very, very, very close call with Old Dominion. Old Dominion really had them on the ropes for the most part at South Carolina. Kentucky, I know they played week one really, really late into the night as there was like a rain delay against, I believe, Southern Miss. I think they even might have called the game early. It was like 31-0 was the score. But I know they didn't kick that one off in Eastern time until like 11 or 12 at night. It was a
Dang.
crazy situation, rain situation they had over there. Um, both teams are honestly pretty equal. I mean, Kentucky fans will probably say that they're way better than South Carolina and vice versa. From an outsider, though, I would say Kentucky probably has the upper hand at home here. I wouldn't be surprised by a lot. South Carolina did not look good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was one of those cases that happens early on a lot in college football where you think there's going to be an upset and you get really excited about there being an upset and maybe even throw a bet down on there being an upset, and then somehow the better team just pulls it out at the end. And I mean, yeah, South Carolina's a better team versus Old Dominion, but they didn't look like it for much of the game.
Yeah, and another game we can kind of note here, which is kind of a fun one, is USF at Alabama, which in many, many years you would never, ever call that a fun game coming up. It would just be Bama throttling USF or whatnot. But ever since former Tennessee offensive coordinator Alex Golish, went and started head coaching there, they had this little battle with Alabama the last couple of years. Have they played 2 years yet or just one?
I'm not sure. I think it might just be one. This might be
Okay.
the second game.
They played.
Um,
They played last year at I think USF, and that was a
mm-hmm.
very close game. And that was Nick Saban's
2-point game.
Alabama. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is in Tuscaloosa. I'm sure DeBoer and Alabama is still trying to prove a point. So I wouldn't be at all bit surprised if they catch up for last year's close game. But I mean, it's something to keep
I
an
don't
eye on.
know.
USF can score some points. So
Plus 31. I don't know. That might be one I look at this week. I mean, I'm high on their quarterback. I'm also very high on Golish. They got a big win in the bowl game last year. It slips my mind who they played, but I remember them surprising a lot of people in the bowl game, especially if no one had paid attention to them the rest of the year. They put up like you said, they can put up some points, and I mean, yeah, Alabama can beat Western Kentucky no problem, but I think this is a tougher matchup. Uh, Maybe not a tough matchup by any means, and on paper, Alabama should throttle them, like you were saying, but I would love to see USF and Golish go in there and scare some people,
I
even
mean,
if they don't come out with a win.
even if they make it close, you can really sit here and argue that they might be the second best team in their state. I mean,
Hey,
Florida and Florida State have had a tough start, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any brighter anytime soon for those teams. But
I agree.
so you could sit
They,
here and say USF. I mean, especially God, if they won against Bama, they're definitely in the. They might be better than Miami, but
they have something to play for too because uh, what I forget what conference they're in. Do you know
are
off the
they?
top of your head?
I know that they were in the American, but due to conference realignment,
Okay,
they might be gone. But
but they're not power 4 yet.
unless
Um,
they move to the Big 12, which I don't think they did.
I don't think they did. UCF did, but I don't believe USF did.
Okay.
And if that's the case, which I'm pretty sure it is, there's a serious competition between probably them and Liberty to be that top group of other conferences to get that spot in the playoffs. So I mean, every game matters for them.
I mean, yeah, their conference has gotten a lot weaker. A lot of the top dogs have left to go to the Big 12. Like teams like Cincinnati, UCF. I think Tulane jumped ship too, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
they're Big 12, I think
So
too,
I mean,
maybe ACC.
a lot of their a lot of their biggest competition is out of that conference. So even
Yeah.
if they don't win this game, which no one's expecting them to, um, go in there and compete, kind of give your team some hope, and go into the conference play and make something happen.
Right. That's what I'll be rooting for. I know that much. Let's see. Next game, we already hit on the Colorado Nebraska game, but it could be an exciting one. Hopefully, it is an exciting one. Besides that, the App State at now number 25 Clemson. They dropped far. Um, this could be, probably will be a get right spot for Clemson at home, playing against a subpar opponent. But on the flip side, it could be the yearly or bi-yearly App State upset that we see
Yeah,
pretty decently often.
they have a tendency to knock somebody off. It feels like every year, even though it might not be, but
Yeah.
they always kind of like to schedule some of these tougher games and make something happen. I know. I mean, Clemson, like we kind of highlighted. I mean, they got the crap beat out of them by Georgia, to say the least. They're definitely going to be looking to respond. Um, they likely will probably win this game. If I was to bet, I would definitely probably bet Clemson to win this game. But I'm sure they're favored by more points than they should be. Which, if you wanted to look that up, I mean, I'm sure they have them by a few scores.
18.
18. I mean, if you were to put a bet down this week, that's not a terrible one for them just for them to cover. I mean, no one's expecting them to win.
That's a weird number too. I mean,
It is.
18. Clemson could win by 17, 2 touchdowns and a field goal, and next thing you know, App State covers.
Yeah, I mean, App State covers, and Clemson looks like they won by a decent margin in that game. So
Right, exactly.
it'd be a little best of both worlds if you bet on that. And then the kind of last game to kind of highlight coming up this week, which we kind of talked about a little bit, was Boise State and Oregon. Um, Boise coming off a game where they scored a ton of points. I don't know if it was their running back that kind of set a record this week. I mean, he put up an insane stat line. He might have had 6 touchdowns, and which we might want to fact check that just to make sure.
Yeah, I
But
got you.
I mean, we mentioned Oregon not playing great, so this could be a recipe for something interesting. Week 1 was kind of just like the disappointment of teams, and then week 2 we kind of have a bunch of potential like underdog stories. It's kind of like the story, the way you could kind of classify week 2. I mean, there's a couple of top ranked matchups, but other than that, it's kind of maybe a disappointing top team playing against someone who is a lesser opponent. So things can go very wrong for some teams this week.
Absolutely. And yeah, just to come back on what you were saying earlier there, Ashton Genty did have 6 touchdowns on 20 carries for 267 yards. I don't know if any of y'all have played college football 25, but he looks like that in the game too. He's the real deal, and I don't think that he's gotten a lot of hype just because he does play for Boise State. But that's a good running back. Interested to see how he does against Oregon. They did allow 45 points against Georgia Southern, which is a lot of points.
It is a lot of
I
points.
mean, they put up 56 points, but who knows? I'm kind of hoping for a shootout. They're currently 19-point dogs, but the over/under is at 61, which I don't know. I could see,
I can see
like
the
I was
overhead in
saying,
that one.
yeah, I could see a high-scoring game, depending on how Oregon's defense looks this game.
I mean,
yeah, I think that. What were you saying?
I was just gonna say, I just can't get over the idea of 6 touchdowns and 20 carries.
Yeah,
Those are literally video game numbers. That's
no kidding.
so impressive. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised by the end of the year if he's in the conversation with the Ollie Gordons of the world, the Dylan Sampsons,
Yeah,
so on and so forth, and get into that conversation of best running back. I mean, you can put up some serious numbers if you can do that.
absolutely. I think some people, depending on where you're from and who's your team, some people probably already would. I know if I was a Boise State fan and just saw that, I'd probably already be throwing them in that conversation.
Everybody would know, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, interesting week 2 coming up. Hopefully UT gets it done against the Wolfpack. at a quote unquote neutral site. I did see right before we got here. I did see a what I thought was a funny stat that it was like NC State set the record, the ACC record in Week 1 for attendance. I don't know if it was an all-time record or just like they had the most out of any other ACC game, but it was only like 45,000 fans
Oh,
or something like that. So I don't know. I don't know if that's just the difference in the ACC and the SEC, but I was surprised by that.
yeah, we had probably about 45,000 in Neyland after halftime when we were up by
Yeah,
45. So,
in the fourth quarter.
and, and it was like 100 degrees outside. So good for them, I guess, you know?
Yeah, right. Take your wins where you can get them. But yeah,
I
other
think
than
on
that, I'm good if you are.
yeah, I think on that note, we'll end today's episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure to follow us on all the social medias and like us on Spotify and kind of. I think there's a way you can actually press to keep up with notifications, and you can check out our website, which kind of has the link to everything there. And we'll have this posted, obviously, when you're listening to it. But the next episode you should be hearing is on Friday. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
Take it easy, y'all.